Alrighty, everyone, welcome back to another episode of In Depth with David. Today, this is Red Sox series recap number 12, where we're going to be recapping the Red Sox three-game set against the Oakland Athletics that just wrapped up last night. And once again, I'm joined by my good friend Ricky. Ricky, how are you doing today?
Good. Just wrapping up, packing up. Sorry for the, common room background, but I'm going to be home and excited to keep these going. So, yeah, it's good to, talk Sox as always. So,
Yeah, you got to live in the moment in the college life. What are your takeaways from this three-game series between the A's and the Sox without burying the lead?
without bearing the lead, I'll just say my thoughts on this series were that it was average, but a little disappointing. I don't think the Sox did as horribly as they could have, and I don't think they did as good as they could have. So we'll get into it. We'll talk about if we put any stock in this particular series, and obviously, yeah. So I think that's the least I've in my descriptions thus far where I've revealed the series. So there you go, guys.
Yeah, I share those same sentiments without burying the lead. Shout out In Depth with David. I'm shouting out our own podcast, which, by the way, you should subscribe. Might as well just plug it right here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. But
Recap soon.
right, and yeah, I mean, for how this series normally turned out, I'd probably be more disappointed. But it was an average series. I can't be too mad at how it went because we did go up against a great team, the Oakland A's, who are right there with us for most wins in the league. So as much as I would have liked for some things to have changed, I think I can't be too mad, but we'll get into it. So game one, the pitching matchup was Nathan Eovaldi versus Chris Bassett of the Oakland A's. Bassett's been on a tear lately. I think they said at the beginning of the game, he's gone 4 straight games with going at least 7 innings. So not too much to complain with there. But heading into the game, bottom of the first inning, JD Martinez gets the Red Sox on the board as he hits a sac fly to bring in Alex Verdugo from third to make it 1-0. And then the very next big moment after this didn't result in any big play or big hits on the field, but it was Mitch Moreland making his return to Boston for the first time since we traded him at the deadline last year. And that brings me to the first question because as I think he deserved, he got a standing ovation from the 9,000 fans, 9,000 plus fans that were there last night or in game one. But do you think he's one of the more underrated Red Sox players in the last year or so? Or not the last year or so, but in the last few years? Because I think he's very underappreciated. He came in when we signed him back in 2017, put together a great 3.5 seasons, had a clutch home run in the World Series against the Dodgers, was really Mr. Reliable in pinch hit situations on defense. So I think he gets lost in the fold of all these players that the Red Sox have brought in the last few years, and he's really underappreciated.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It was actually pretty sad to see Mitch Moreland go. He was one of those guys that was just such a huge part of that 2018 team, just making it what it was. So it's anytime a member of that team kind of comes along, it's always good to just cheer them on. I know when the Sox played Brock Holt and the Rangers, I know that obviously it was a road game, but I'm people and the announcers were very happy to see Brock Holt. So yeah, I definitely agree. I think Mitch Moreland is a really likable guy. I think what he did for the Sox was what they wanted him to do. I think he had a really solid bat. Even last year, he was actually off to a pretty good start when that Sox team was really struggling. So I'm glad he's with another good organization that's focused on winning and that he can really help out. So I hope Mitch Moreland continues doing well. I know he's getting up there in age, but it's still good to see him playing. So yeah.
Right, and I guarantee if Fenway was at full capacity, they would have given him an even louder cheer. And you're exactly right. Like, even when the Sox sucked last year, he was great, and he was able to net us 2 prospects. And I think one of our prospects we got, Josh Rosario, is doing really well in the minors for us. So, he did really well for us, and it's still paying off after the trade. And I know the Sox even wanted to re-sign him this offseason, and obviously it didn't work out, but I just think he's very underappreciated in the grand scheme of things because he was just as big a reason as any of those contributors in that 2018 World Series winning team to us winning it all that year. So just great to see him get the respect he deserves.
Yeah.
But getting back to the game.
Just one last thing I figured out before we move on is I believe Mitch and his wife Susanna Moreland. I think they do a charity for. I believe they did it for Boston Children's when they were here too, and that's another thing too that the Moreland family has done for Boston, and I really appreciate that. And I know they've done like Toys for Tots and things. So shout out Mitch and Susanna Moreland for that too. Really good people. So
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. But now we jump back to the top of the fourth inning, and Matt Olson, the first baseman for the Athletics, singles past the shift between Marwin Gonzalez and Xander Bogaerts. Seth Brown is able to score from second on display, making it 1-1. And then there's no more scoring until the seventh inning, as this was pretty much a pitcher's duel between Eovaldi and Bassett. They both had these little hiccups, but up until this point, they were dealing. And then in the seventh inning, Darwin Hernandez comes in, and first and third with no outs, Chapman of the Oakland A's singles past Bogaerts to score Olson from second, and that makes it 2-1 Oakland. And then after this, after Darwin gets into trouble, the Red Sox bring in our favorite player in this podcast, Adam Ottavino. Again, we talked about this last podcast. I don't know what Alex Cora is thinking with bringing in Ottavino in these situations where we're either down by one or up by one. I'd much rather bring him in when it's either a blowout or we're winning by a lot and we have a hefty cushion. And I thought he learned his lesson last time against Baltimore, where Ottavino almost screwed us and blew that game. But Cora just clearly didn't learn anything. So just help me understand, why does Cora keep doing this and bringing Ottavino in these clutch situations? Because he hasn't earned the right to do this.
I honestly don't know. I think if I were to really put a finger on, I think it's like, as we said at the very beginning of this podcast series, Ottavino was kind of slated to be like the closer, the guy. Matt Barnes wasn't expected to, play as well as he has, and other guys like Whitlock, which we'll talk about a little later, out of the pen. But I guess Cora, if I were to really guess, I think it's just Cora still, for some reason, has this firm belief that Ottavino is going to like break out of the slump or whatever. And I don't know. I personally am baffled, just as you said too, by like just why he keeps doing this. But yeah, I don't know. I think eventually it's going to stop, but I hope that either Ottavino improves in these situations or Cora learns that he's more of a setup guy or a guy you put in when there's way more of a lead or you're down by so much. It's just, a put it away game.
Like, I love Cora as a manager, but I don't understand some of his decisions, like obviously with all this Ottavino stuff. I still don't know why Marwin Gonzalez gets put in the lineup all the time when someone like Michael Chavis is, in my opinion, more deserving of the spot. It's something personal against Marwin because he's made a name for himself in this league as like a human Swiss Army knife where you can put him in at any position, and he's done really well defensively and decent offensively. But I don't get it. And before that, we had Darwin Hernandez come in, and I don't really trust Darwin Hernandez either. I know you sent me that tweet that Carabas put out of relievers that he's on the fence with, and one of them was Darwin.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about Darwin Hernandez? Because he's another one I'd be nervous putting in a playoff game if we're up one or down one. I don't also trust him in clutch situations.
Yeah, I agree with Carabas' tweet, and I agree with you too. Yeah, he's been a little shaky, for sure. And there's some other guys that we can touch on in later games in the series too that we're a little shaky on as well. But yeah, I definitely there's just something about how he's been playing recently that's just to me.
So Ottavino comes in, as we said, and right away after asking why, we are given the answer as to why this was a bad decision, because Elvis Andrus of the Oakland A's singles to right to score Chapman, and the A's increase their lead from 2-1 to 3-1. But then bottom of the seventh, Rafael Devers homers in the monster seats to give the Red Sox a little bit of hope, as it's now 3-2. And bottom of the ninth inning, the Red Sox end up having runners on first and third, but Christian Vasquez fouls out to Olson at first to end the game. Jake Diekman of the Athletics gets the save, and the A's take game one of this series 3-2. But as we said a couple minutes ago, it was a pitching duel, so we have to tip our cap off to Chris Bassett, who went 7 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, no walks, and 10 strikeouts. I mean, he just completely stymied our offense, which a lot of teams have had trouble doing. And then Nathan Eovaldi put together a good start, 6 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 2 walks, and 4 strikeouts. It's just one of those games where our offense just wasn't as good as it needs to be. So you can't do anything about that. So heading into game 2, the pitching matchup is Eduardo Rodriguez versus Caprillion. Let me check his first name. James Caprillion for the Athletics, who was making his first major league start. And bottom of the first inning, Marwin hits a leadoff double to right, and there's bases loaded and no outs later in the inning, but Bogey strikes out. And with 2 outs, Vasquez gets walked. It's a 4-pitch walk to Vasquez, and this ends up forcing a run in. So already in the bottom of the first, it's 1-0 Red Sox. And then top of the second, this is where, and this is going to be a theme of the series, where there's a nice defensive play about the outfield of the Red Sox, as Olsen of the Athletics, who's had a big series already up until this point, hits one to deep center off of the wall. Verdugo has trouble getting to it as he runs into the wall in center, and then he slips. But Renfroe is right there. He takes the ball, and he makes a pinpoint perfect throw to third to nab Olsen, who was trying to stretch a double into a triple. So just incredible. Like, it's hard for me to explain this without actually showing the play to the viewers here, but it couldn't be any more perfect. Renfroe was in the right spot at the right time and just threw it at full speed. I think he threw it at like 93 miles per hour or something like that, something crazy. And it was a one-hop throw to Devers, who made the tag to nag Olsen at third. So, I mean, that brings me to my next question, where I was going to ask if we kind of talked about this in the last podcast, but are you pleasantly surprised with Renfroe? Because I think, we expected him to just be kind of like this filling guy. Like, you don't expect the world from him, but you don't expect nothing from him. You just kind of expect him to be average to below average, but his defense has been amazing. He leads the league in all right fielders with 9 defensive saves. And obviously he just had an amazing play in this game, but I thought he was going to be all defense and no offense. And he's kind of like the full package so far this year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely surprised by Renfroe. And honestly, that's good to see. It's looking like a lot of these free agent acquisitions are guys the Sox have traded for, and Chaim Bloom has really brought a point to bring in the last offseason and late last year have actually been really helping. I mean, we talk about Pivetta. Obviously, he's doing well tonight to, jump ahead to this series we'll talk about coming up. And obviously, Renfroe's kind of really starting to heat up, and Kike was doing solid before his injury. And, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Renfroe, and I'm glad we're getting that because he's a deeper rotation guy. And if you have a rotation, which the Red Sox rotation is already pretty deep with guys that are hitting really well, so to have yet another guy, hitting well deeper in the rotation, like that's really what you want, to just keep tacking onto this already dominant offense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I expected him to be decent. Like, I knew he was going to bring veteran experience. Obviously, we talked about how he made the World Series last year with the Rays, and I wanted him to be better because he only hit 190, so you got to expect him to at least hit like 210, 220, but he's just been on a tear lately, and that was just another great play from him. But later in the second inning, Sean Murphy is able to score Stephen Piscotty from the Athletics with the double to left center to make it 1-1 Oakland, or 1-1 tie game. And then top of the third, this is where things get a little heated as Eduardo Rodriguez strikes out Ramon Laureano of the Athletics on an inside pitch. And this pitch was just ridiculously inside. So obviously Laureano was very mad. He ends up slamming his helmet on the ground, starts yelling at the umpire, and deservedly gets ejected because, you can't show up the umpire that's just asking to get ejected. And that's exactly what happened here. But
right.
You also got a feel for Laureano because I don't know if you saw this play, but that pitch wasn't even close. And it was just ridiculous. Obviously, we know the theme this year has been, it seems like the umpires have been as bad as ever, maybe even the worst they've ever been, because the umpiring has been pretty awful, I would say, the last few years more than ever, whether it's messing up replays or, missing more strikes than ever. But this year, it just seems like a culmination of everything. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's just hard to blame Laureano for getting mad there and, getting himself ejected, because that easily should have been ball 4, but he ends up striking out and the A's threat ends right there. But do you know, why is the strikeout zone so bad this year? Do you have any explanation for that? Because it's just, it seems worse, like the worst it's ever been.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. It is bad though. That's definitely something I've been noticing.
Do you think that because the MLB has talked about this, where they just have the umpires be there, but essentially they take the job out of their hands and have them wear like AirPods, like a wave check or whatever. And there's like a computer system that tells them if it's a strike or not. So then they get like the signal from whoever to say, call this a strike. Do you think that'd be more effective, or do you think the MLB is going too far with a method like that if it were to ever be implemented?
I think that's a little bit too far. Because I think with like a robotic based system, an electronic based system, there's going to be inaccuracies with that. Honestly, I think more so than if you were to do it just by the standard way. I think it's better from the eye perspective because the umpire's right there. So they I don't know.
I just think that's we talked about this in last prior podcasts where you don't want to mess with the purity of the game, and I feel like just having them stand there and have a computer tell them what to do, that just doesn't feel right. And you have to let them do their job. I mean, yes, their accuracy has been atrocious this year for most of the umpires. I mean, Angel Hernandez, I haven't seen him do a Red Sox game this year, but Angel Hernandez is just in the news again because his umpiring has been awful this year once again. Um, I don't know if you saw, he made like a controversial call on like a Cleveland Indians Royals game, and Francona came out to argue with him, and Francona said, "Whenever there's a bad call, why is it always you?" He said it straight to his face. So
That perfectly sums it up.
yeah,
I mean, that is great.
I mean, I don't get it. Like, you'd think over time these umpires would learn from their mistakes and get better, but it's just only getting worse. And I hope it changes, but I don't have high hopes. But after that, we go to the top of the fifth inning, and Elvis Andrews a doubles to left center. That moves Mitch Moreland to third, so there's runners at second and third with no outs for Oakland. And with one out, former Red Sox player Jet Lowry, who that's quite the throwback. He didn't play for the Red Sox. He played for the Red Sox in like '07 to 2011. I didn't even know he was still in the league anymore. He's like 38 years old, but he's with Oakland. He ends up grounding out to Bogarts, but Moreland is able to score, so that will give the Oakland Athletics the lead 2-1. And then Erod balks, something you don't see much in the MLB anymore, as he was looking at Elvis Andrews trying to steal home, or Andrews was faking stealing home, so that caused Erod to balk. But because of the balk, Erod or Elvis Andrews from third can now come home, so that makes it 3-1 Athletics. So the fact that Erod forgot to step off the mound really cost the Red Sox here as another run comes in, as you can't start and stop the pitching motion. I mean, that's just baseball 101. But Erod balks, and it cost the Red Sox here. And then looked like there could have been more damage, but Michael Chavis, who's playing first tonight or during this game, makes a nice leaping play to retire the side. And I mean, if you're the Red Sox front office, you got to love what you see from Michael Chavis there. I mean, I feel like he could easily compete with someone like Marwin for being a utility guy. And the fact that he can play at a high level at multiple positions is really encouraging. And he proved it right there on that play. But after that, bottom of the fifth inning, Boston has first and third with no outs after Kaprelian throws the ball into the outfield. But JD has a soft grounder, and Marwin's on third. And you'd think Marwin would stay at third, but he tries to get a little bit greedy and tries to advance to home on this grounder, but he ends up getting caught in a pickle and eventually gets tagged out. So the base running blunders continue. We're going to use this phrase here. We've used it a lot on this podcast, but do you take too much stock in the fact that we're still doing base running blunders into mid-May? Because I don't know if you saw this play, but the grounder was barely hit in front of home plate, and Marwin was, for whatever reason, running on contact with 0 outs. And obviously he ended up getting hosed as he got caught in a pickle. But is it concerning that we're still making these simple baseball mistakes coming into May when easily that could have been played so much differently, and maybe the Red Sox end up scoring a run later?
Yeah, I think it is actually really starting to cost them. Again, I'm not going to put too much stock, but I'm going to start putting a little bit more than I did before. I just hope the Red Sox can work this out before it's too late, because it is definitely costly, and in games where it's been costly, there has been costly results. So this game, again, we'll get into why, but yeah.
Because I just don't get it, where I feel like these players are saying like, oh, I just ran into an out, whatever, it happens. But these errors in judgment cost us runs. And in games like this, it's going to screw us. I mean, it screwed us here. We could have gone a run because it was a close game. I think we're only down 2 at this point. And for Marwin to make that mistake, it's a little ridiculous, if you ask me. It's unacceptable. Do you think Cora feels the same way as us? I mean, I think we might have talked about this in a prior podcast, but do you think Cora, even after a game like this, is emphasizing base running over a lot of other things? Or do you think he's just kind of sweeping it under the rug and saying, oh, it happens, it's a long season?
I think he might be honestly sweeping it under the rug. Now, I hate to be like super critical of Cora because I think he's done a really good job turning this team around and really been a helpful locker room presence for sure for the team. But it just seems like it's not really an area of concern, at least to me as someone viewing. Again, Cora might be emphasizing it, and the guys are just struggling to, perform on what they've been practicing. But I think if he hasn't already told them about, the issues with that and had them review, how they can be better base runners, I feel like he probably should real soon. But I don't personally feel like he has, because there's been other things that I think he wants the Red Sox to focus on, like pitching and relieving and working on defensive efforts and just hitting in general, because the offense is such a powerhouse. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think if he was emphasizing it, they would be taking it seriously. But I feel like he's not really addressing it to the team, because Alex Cora is the type of manager where he's kind of like the anti-Brad Stevens, to talk about the Celtics head coach for a second, where players are going to listen to Cora. They like playing for Cora. The reason why we won a World Series in 2018 was because they felt like he was not only a manager, but a friend. And you listen to your friends. So no one listens to Brad Stevens if you're not a Celtics fan. That's the big theme of the season for the Celtics players. Is part of the reason why we're doing so bad or so average is because no one listens to Brad and when he gives advice. But if Cora told them, guys, we got to focus on base running. We can't be running into outs anymore. They'd be listening, and we'd see that happening in the games. But plays like this that happened a couple games ago, they're happening because Cora hasn't talked about it. So, we hate to be critical of Cora, but this is something that needs to be cleaned up sooner rather than later, because we are in a playoff race at this moment. I don't know if we'll be saying the same thing come the trade deadline at the end of July, but if you want to win games, you don't run into outs. It's that simple. So moving forward, top of the 6th inning, Olsen, once again for the A's, takes Eduardo Rodriguez deep to right, and this makes it 4-1. Do you think it was a mistake for Cora? I kind of I feel like we're giving him a lot of heat here, but he left in Erod into the 6th inning after Erod throughout the game had gotten into multiple jams. Come the 6th inning, he already has north of 80 pitches. Do you think we should have taken him out? Do you think it was a mistake leaving him in? Because he's already struggled. He's already given up 3 runs, which isn't bad, but he hasn't looked good at all. Do you think Cora should have taken him out?
I think so, yeah. I think he left him in unnecessarily long. It kind of reminded me of that other time he put Erod back into when he should have left him out. So I think he just wants Erod to get as many pitches in as he can, maybe just to keep his arm going and whatnot. I don't really know, but yeah, I don't think that was a wise idea, honestly, in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to keep in mind to all the viewers, this is a quick disclaimer. We say this every now and then, but we try and watch the games when we can, but if we can't, we watch the recaps. And I don't know if there were many relievers available during this game for the Sox, so maybe Cora was just gambling and hoping that Erod would be able to, work into the 7th inning. But obviously that didn't work out, and it is what it is. But in the bottom of the 8th inning, Red Sox have 2nd and 3rd on with 1 out, and Vasquez grounds out to 2nd. So he's out, but then Bogarts, for whatever reason, tries to score from 3rd after the play has already been made, and he ends up getting tagged out, being a little bit too aggressive, trying to score a run sneakily. He was trying to sneak in through the back door after the play was made, and it cost him, and it cost us, as it was a unconventional inning-ending double play to end the side. If he stays put, we have 2 runners in scoring position with 1 swing of the bat being able to tie the game as we have another chance as there's 2 outs. But Bogarts got a little too greedy, and he tried to score after the play was made, and he ends up getting thrown out. So just another base running blunder. Do you understand where Bogarts was coming from there? Because he was trying to see maybe if he could sneak in and score a run. But in a situation like that, I feel like you should just be more conservative because we're in no position to be taking risks when we're down 2. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I feel pretty much the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I thought it was a little ridiculous because you can't be just, again, running into outs. And the theme of this game 2 for the Red Sox, was tons and tons of base running blunders. And this is what ends up costing us, as Red Sox are going to go on to lose, as Jake Diekman of the Oakland A's, for the second straight night, closes out the Red Sox. And Oakland wins this game 4-1 and ends up taking the series. But we head into game 3, or before, actually, I want to touch on the pitching for game 2. It was Erod versus Caprillion. Erod, decent outing, not his best stuff. 6 innings pitched, 7 hits, 4 earned runs, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. But I have to tip my cap to Caprillion on the Athletics, as it was his first MLB start. And he went 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, and 6 strikeouts. So, he just had his good stuff. He had his stuff tonight. And, I mean, can't complain about that. But what do you think about this Erod start? Because, I mean, it was probably his worst start of the year, and this was his first loss of the season. But do you think this is a chance to kind of like get into a downward spiral, or do you think he can rebound from this? Because we've seen some pitchers in the squad this year, like a Salmora or like a Whitlock, when they have one bad outing, it seems to just go down for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Do you think Erod can maybe rebound from this? I think he has the chance.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it's just a play it by year because I don't know.
Right. I mean, anything can happen. I mean, we both thought this would be an easy win for them, and lo and behold, the A's shocked us all. But we head into game 3, the final game of the series, and it is Garrett Richards versus Sean Manaea of the Oakland Athletics. And I don't know if you remember this, but Sean Manaea was actually the last pitcher to no-hit the Red Sox. He no-hit us 3 years ago in 2018 when we won the World Series. And he dominated that team. I think he gave us our second loss all year, which was pretty impressive because that was towards the end of April. But, the fact that he was able to no-hit that dominant team is a feat in itself. But bottom of the first, Michael Chavis has an aggressive base running play, and this is an aggressive base running play gone right for the Red Sox, as he hits a ball down the right field line. It didn't go all the way down in the corner. It was pretty softly hit, but he ends up turning a single into a double. So Laureano for the A's can't make the throw, so Chavis is able to turn what should have been a single into a double. And I mean, it's just great because that was a calculated risk, and the announcers talked about this too in the game, where when you're struggling, you have nothing to lose if it's a 0-0 game to try and steal an extra base. And that's what Chavis did and ended up paying off. And then JD, 2 batters later, JD Martinez drives him in with a 2-out single, or a single to center, making it 1-0 Red Sox. And then the very next batter, Xander Bogaerts, hits a 2-run homer to left that hits off the foul pole. A lot of people thought it went foul initially, but it ends up hitting off the foul pole to make it 3-0 Red Sox.
Right.
And then bottom of the second, Hunter Renfroe hits a hard single off of the Green Monster. And right after that, Bobby Dahlbeck homers the center just left of the flagpole to make it 5-0 Red Sox already very early in this game. And these last 2 series, I've got to say, have been really encouraging for me for Bobby Dahlbeck because he's showcased his power so well. Obviously, he had the homer off Harvey in the Baltimore series. He homered in this game. It was a shot, too, like 400-plus foot shot. Do you think this is him trying to start to turn a corner a bit? Do you think he's kind of hearing the noise with the whole Chavis getting called up situation?
I hope so. I mean, I know Chavis has been pretty solid since being called up too, so I think that might encourage Dahlbeck a bit too. And I also think because you're seeing other later rotation guys like Renfroe start to heat up too, so that's also more pressure on Dahlbeck as well, where he's typically the 8-9 guy to really help out and Yeah, it's good to see. I'm glad he's hitting for more power. That's what we expected from Dahlback. So, yeah, I'm not gonna really call it a complete turnaround yet because he still isn't like consistently averaging a hit or two every game. Like, but he is definitely showing signs of life, and I think that's good. And I think again, the season is still relatively young, and the fact that the last couple series he's been hitting for power definitely help. I mean, the Orioles series too, he had that easy home run too, and yeah, so he's definitely showing what we expected from him. Yeah, I'm hoping that continues, but yeah.
So the inning would end up continuing for the Red Sox, the bottom of the second frame, as Andrews couldn't handle a grounder from JD Martinez, and then Bogarts ends up making them pay with a double down the left field line, as this scores Jonathan Arouse, who was called up to the Red Sox recently to make it 6-0 Boston. And then bottom of the third, Vasquez and Renfroe have back-to-back singles. Dahlback just beats out an infield single as he just put his foot down on the first base bag before the pitcher, Mania, could get to it. So there's bases loaded with no outs. And Mania is out after 2+ innings. So I don't know if you saw this, but Mania, obviously, he no-hit the Red Sox, like I said, in 2018. But whenever his career pitching at Fenway, his ERA is north of 13. And we just got to him again. I think it was 6-0 at this point, and obviously the woes at Fenway continues. So, I mean, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the last series, where Fenway, if you didn't know, to all the viewers, is really a hitter's park, where there's a lot of high-scoring games that come from playing at Fenway, and a lot of pitchers probably hate pitching here, I would say. So, just nothing too nice to see for Mania, as he's done after 2+ innings. And then Arouse hits into a double play, but ends up scoring Christian Vasquez from third to make it 7-0 Boston. And then top of the sixth inning, Garrett Richards, the pitcher for the Sox, gets a double play to get out of a bases loaded threat. And then bottom six, Chavis ends up getting another double, very similar to the one he got to lead off the game, where it was very similarly hit, where it probably should have been a single, but he turned into a double. And he just gets up and he's like super energetic. And it's just really great to see both him being energetic and it seems to be firing up the Red Sox, because this happened when we first called him up in 2019, where we were kind of struggling to start off that season. But once we called him up, we went on a bit of a run. And it seems like it's kind of happening here. So I'm impressed with what I've seen from Chavis.
Yeah, same here. I know we were really collectively happy about when we first saw him get called up. Then obviously in his first game back, he hit that home run. But yeah, he's definitely. And I know you said, I think last podcast, that if the best chance for him to stay in order to stay on the Red Sox, he has to play excellent. And I think from what we've seen what we saw in this game and in this series as a whole, is that his base running was solid. Obviously, he made a single into the double. Again, something the Red Sox are struggling with, so that's good to see. He's hitting deep. He's defensively doing all right. And it's good to see. And I know he's had an effect on other guys. I remember him seeing a post-game interview where he was kind of hyping up Renfroe's streak. So I'm glad Chavis has that presence. Maybe he's helping Dahlback and Marwin and some of those other later rotation guys that could be facing a potential move. So it's really, Michael Chavis has been actually a pretty big positive since he's been called up. So I'm really happy to see that too, because I think I didn't want the Red Sox to give up on him, honestly. And I know they wouldn't fully, but it's just good to see him back, because I think that rookie season, as we've talked about too, was really promising and really gave us just a sliver of what we may see. And he's only 25. Again, he's around Dahlback's age, so it's not like we're talking a guy who's in his upper 20s, almost early 30s, that we should just say, I think enough's enough. I mean, Dahlback and Chavis are around the same age. So, yeah, I think Chavis is starting to work himself into a good spot here, which is good to see. Really good to see.
Going back to what you just said about maybe giving up on him, are you surprised that he didn't make the opening day roster? Because he went off in spring training this year, and I feel like he's always been a major league player. Yeah. I think he proved that since we called him up a couple of years ago. I guess injuries kind of maybe put him in a bad spot where he was pushed out of the rotation. But I'm kind of surprised that we didn't keep him on the team. I feel like it would have been easy to just say, congratulations, Chavis, you have a spot. Marwin, you're going to release it. We're going to release you because we're only paying Marwin all his $3 million. So it's really not that big of a deal if we just cut him. But are you surprised too he didn't make the roster right out of spring training?
Honestly, yeah, I was too, to be honest, because he was playing really well in spring training, and he's younger than Marwin, and I at this point too, if he continues to play well in Kike's absence, I just don't see why they would keep him in Worcester when he looks pro ready. Like you said, he looks like an MLB player, and he's had that experience too. Usually with guys in Worcester, it's really old guys like Steve Pierce or whatever that are like rehabbing. Examples Pedroia, younger guys that are working their way in like prospects, and then guys that are kind of starting, and then just kind of like how the NBA does that with G League too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if Chavis ends up getting sent down again, we could see him be like the Barry Bonds of the AAA, where he's just raking against all the pitchers. Because again, we're advocates for him on the In Depth with David podcast. We endorse him. We hope he stays with the Red Sox once Kike Hernandez is healthy, but we'll see. But getting back to the game, after Chapman can't nail JD at third, JD Martinez hits another grounder, and Chapman, the third baseman, can't throw it, or it's an errant throw. It gets away from the first baseman. So Chavis is able to score from third. And after 6 innings, it's 8-0 Red Sox. And Garrett Richards for the Red Sox would also be done after 6 innings. And he put together another fantastic start. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, no earned runs, 3 walks, and 4 strikeouts. You can't ask for much more from Garrett Richards after the horrendous start he got off to this year with us.
Good stuff, honestly.
I'm willing to apologize for hating on him earlier this year in the podcast. I mean, look, he's 4 straight quality starts, I think. Did you hear why he's starting to turn around? Did you hear about the change that he made?
I didn't know. What happened with that?
So he met with the pitching coach, and they changed a mechanic in his delivery. I think they changed like the motion of his delivery. And ever since he's done that, it was, I think, right before the Mets series, he's been dominant in every start. So it just goes to show that one little tweak or one little change can really fix things for the better.
Yeah.
Do you think, though, that this is a real thing in Boston where pitchers struggle? Like whenever the Red Sox acquire a pitcher for whatever reason, whether it's a high name, low name, middle name, they always seem to struggle when they first come to Boston. We saw this happen with Josh Beckett way back in 06. David Price obviously sucked in 2016. Obviously, Garrett Richards got off to a bad start this year. But do you think that's a real thing where whether it's the pressure of playing in Boston or you just not having your best stuff, it's hard to pitch at the beginning in Boston and it takes a little bit to get used to?
I think so. I think that's actually a really valid reasoning behind that. Yeah. I think that might be what Garrett Richards was dealing with too, because he seems like he's been looking more comfortable too at Fenway on the road. So I think that might play a role, honestly.
Because it seems like all these high name pitchers struggle too, which is weird at one point or another. Because Dice K, when he was with us, he had 2 good first seasons. Then it was 2009 when things kind of took a turn for the worst. Chris Sale, 2017-2018 was amazing, but then 2019 hit, and obviously that's when he knew, okay, this is bad, I need Tommy John. But I think that's for sure a thing where we see it, whether it's on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball, when people come to Boston, they're kind of like blinded by the lights or whatever, and it takes them a little bit to adjust. But after that, Garrett Whitlock pitched the last 3 innings, and this is what I watched the end of this game last night, and I was a little confused as to why Garrett Whitlock is pitching this long. Like, I think 3 innings is maybe a little bit too much. I know we talked about how the Red Sox are trying to maybe turn him into a starter down the line, but if you want to keep him as a reliever for now, I feel like we should have given him a shorter appearance last night. But what do you think about this whole thing of like turning him into maybe a longer reliever pitcher where he comes in and pitches maybe 3 or 4 innings out of the pen? Is that something you're for? Or would you rather keep him in the situation he's in as just a 1 inning setup guy?
I think he looked pretty good in this 3 inning stint here, and I know there was another game earlier in the year where he pitched 2.5 too and did really solid. So, and he has struggled a little bit recently, but he's been in that position like you just mentioned. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind taking a gamble on that, and that's kind of helpful too because if he continues to do well in that 2-3 inning approach to after the starter and maybe before Matt Barnes, or he kind of eliminates the need in certain games or in certain situations for some of the more, as we talked about, on the fence guys like Sawamura or Darwin or Josh Taylor or whatever, guys that they step on the mound and you're like, I don't know how that's going to go. So if Whitlock, and again, Whitlock hasn't been flawless, but if he does well in that multiple inning kind of role, then yeah, that might actually help out the Sox in certain situations.
So Cora said if tonight Pivetta could have gone, because spoiler alert, the Red Sox are playing right now and Pivetta's pitching, but if Pivetta couldn't have gone tonight, either Garrett Whitlock or Matt Andriese, I kid you not, Matt Andriese would have gotten the start for the Sox tonight. I'm assuming this is kind of a slam dunk answer, but we probably would have both felt more comfortable if Garrett Whitlock was starting.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm a little on the fence about either of them starting, but I definitely take Whitlock over Andriese.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like the idea of holding off on making Garrett Whitlock into a starter maybe next year, because this is kind of like an experimental year as well as it's gone for the Sox to see what they have, because we're not really expecting to be true contenders, as we've said in this podcast before. So this year, even though it's going better than expected, we're just kind of playing and like tinkering with things and seeing which puzzle pieces fit where. So maybe towards the end of the year in September or whatever, we throw in Garrett Whitlock for a start and see how well he does. But for now, I just say, why not? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, and just keep Whitlock in the pen where he's done excellent so far this year. But getting back to the game, top of the 7th inning, Mark Canha, I believe that's his name on the Athletics. Yep, Mark Canha, the left fielder, hits one past Renfroe into deep right. And then there's a relay from Renfroe to Jonathan Arouse, who's playing second, to nail Murphy at the plate, who was trying to score first. So just another fantastic defensive play from Renfroe. Obviously, it wasn't an amazing throw because it was a relay play, but for a team who struggled at times defensively, the Red Sox made a ton of nice highlight-worthy plays in the series. So that's just really exciting to see moving forward. And then in the 8th inning, the A's would end up getting on the board as Moreland singles, and then he's able to come around to score after Olsen on the Athletics grounds out. And then top of the 9th, to end this game, Hunter Renfroe has a nice lunging play in right field to steal a hit from Mark Canha, and it's really only fitting that he's the one to make a nice defensive play to end this game and also end the series. So Red Sox blow out the Athletics. They win 8-1, and they get a series salvaging victory, even though Oakland does take 2 of 3. And that's the series for you. So just a couple of talking points I wanted to talk about is, do you see some 2013 similarities with this team? Because obviously we know the 2013 Red Sox was just a magical group of guys. I mean, the motive to win for the city after the Marathon bombing was enough to make sure that all these hungry veterans got together and realized, let's do something special for the city. But if you look at it, this team is kind of similarly constructed to that team, where we have a ton of veteran guys who have a lot of experience. Obviously, Bogarts and Martinez have won at least one championship with us. Renfroe won it with the Rays, or went with the Rays last year. Kike Hernandez won it with the Dodgers. And obviously Sale has experience with us. So the names go on and on. Devers. Do you think this team has some similarities to 2013, where it's not the best team on paper, but their chemistry just really pushes them forward and makes them an overachieving team? Or do you think I'm reading too much into it and we're probably just going to be a middle-of-the-road team by the end of the year?
I don't know. Honestly, I have no idea.
Because I don't
think that they're the 2013 team, but I just don't know, honestly.
It'd be amazing if this season ends like it did in 2013, but I don't see that happening as well as a season. Because we got off to a great start. We all know this 9-3, but since then we've been everything but average. I think our record is like 14 and like 14-12 since the 9-3 start. So that's as average as it gets. So I think we could see this team maybe winning 85 games, but if you ask me, are we going to beat the Yankees or the Astros or the Twins in the playoffs? I mean, no, like we're not going to. As much as I love this group of guys, like we're not there yet. But could we compete for a playoff spot and maybe win a game or win a series? Yeah, I could see that happening. Anything can happen in baseball, and I mean, the chemistry. You got a lot of people overperforming. Like I compared Renfroe to someone like Steven Drew in the 2013 team, where they're coming off, being average to below average players for teams in the past, like the Diamondbacks or the Padres in Renfroe's case and the Rays, where you didn't do too much. You were really disappointing, but a fresh start kind of made it so you perform really well. And obviously we saw how Steven Drew performed the rest of his career after he was with us. He was really below average to disappointing, but he kind of broke out with us both offensively and defensively. So that's why I compared him to Renfroe, because obviously Renfroe had the one good year with San Diego. Last year with Tampa, he was disappointing, but this year he's done really well for us and kind of exceeded expectations. So I think there's definitely some correlations there. That's one talking point. And then I just wanted to ask, do you think the Red Sox have the best defensive outfield in baseball? Because we have 10 outfield assists, the most in the MLB. Verdugo's playing great defense. Renfroe's playing good defense. Franchi Cordero's kind of been hot and cold, but
Kike was good too before his injury, too, to add on to that as well.
Kike Hernandez, that's a good point. I forgot about that. Kike Hernandez, also great in center when we put him there. Franchi Cordero, hot and cold, but you figure he's probably going to figure out how to play left at some point. So do you think we could have the best defensive outfield in baseball?
I think so, honestly. We've seen a lot of really key defensive plays in that outfield this year. So, yeah, that's good to see. I'm glad the Sox have a new, fresh outfield. I mean, obviously, we all missed that 2018, JBJ, Mookie, and Benintendi outfield. But it's good to see a group of guys out there that are playing solid. So,
do you think? I think Renfroe's contract is only for 1 year. So, do you envision? I mean, it's kind of a ways away to tell. You don't know how the rest of the season is going to go, but would you be open to bringing back Renfroe next year, not as a starter, but as a fourth outfielder? Because I would.
I think if Renfroe continues to play well, and I think if he continues to play well on both ends, offensively and defensively, he's not too old. He's 29, going to be 30, so you could still get a couple years. I think re-signing Renfroe reasonably, not, paying him overpaying.
$10 million, like Garrett Richards.
Yeah, like Garrett Richards, or how the Red Sox have a tendency to had a tendency in the past to re-sign and overpay older players like Steve Pearce, for example. Hunter Renfroe, yeah, we don't want another like Steve Pearce situation, but if Renfroe
or Steven Drew
too, exactly, who you just mentioned, like I think it really depends on his continued play, and yeah, I think that's the biggest factor, honestly, because you could still get a couple solid years out of him if he's good still.
I agree. I don't want him to be the starter next year. I'm really hoping. I think we're both hoping too that Jarren Duran. I think it's safe to say I'd be shocked if he wasn't on the opening day roster next year for the Sox, and I think he's going to find a spot in the outfield. Him, Verdugo, and maybe Renfroe or Cordero or someone, maybe Kike. But I think I'd much rather bring back Renfroe as a fourth outfielder than a starter. Obviously, he's done well, but this is just not a long-term winning plan, and this whole sustainability idea behind Bloom to just, keep bringing back Renfroe to start. But if he's a bench player, I'm all for it because he's done well so far this year. But who are your Red Sox players of the series? We'll get into this.
So my Red Sox players of the series, for this series, I'm going to go with my number one player. I'm going to actually take Michael Chavis.
Ice Horse.
I think the Ice Horse is really he did what he needed to do. I think Michael Chavis he had that solid base running play. He was hitting well. He was good defensively. He's bringing chemistry and energy to that locker room and helping other guys that are deeper in that rotation. I think he could be, like we've mentioned in the past, competition maybe for somebody like Dahlbeck or Marwin Gonzalez, who could be facing, getting cut or sent down. I think Chavis's addition to this roster has actually helped the team. I think even in the first 2 games of the series where the Sox kind of struggled a bit, Chavis kind of hung in there and he was a bright spot. I was not disappointed by how he played, and I'm glad he played well because it shows that he still has some staying power. And as you mentioned too, he's an MLB guy. I mean, he's ready. So I hope the Red Sox continue, and I'd love to see him, continue with this team. And I think the second player I'd give it to is Hunter Renfroe, just because as we talked about him a lot in this pod too, I think he's really been heating up. He had some nice defensive plays this series. Today, spoiler alert, he hit a home run. But yeah, I like that he's, showing that he's, a solid option. And after that disappointing season, it's like a good rebound year. And then for pitching, crazy enough, I'm going to have to go with Garrett Richards. Just because.
Once again.
Yeah. Once again, I think I picked him last series. I was very pleasantly surprised by Garrett Richards' performance yesterday, and I'm glad he did as well as he did against a really solid team. So that's an excellent win. And Garrett Richards getting a good win against like the Orioles, I mean, that's great. But when it's against Oakland and you're limiting that team to 0 runs with his start, I mean, that's really good stuff. So, and then I also think for relief, I'm going to have to give it to Whitlock just because he pitched multiple innings in that game yesterday. And, he looked pretty solid there. So some of the other guys, Sawamura, Darwin, Josh Taylor, Matt Andrees have been a little inconsistent. So it's kind of hard to pick a reliever. But I guess I'd say Whitlock. So.
Yeah, so my Red Sox players of the series, number 1, Hunter Renfroe, for reasons you said too. He just made a bunch of amazing plays, both offensively and defensively. He's had a lights-out month of May, and it just proved even more in this series. Had a nice play to end Game 3. Had the nice play to get a relay throw to Rouse to nail someone. Then he had that amazing throw, and I think the second game of the series from all the way deep in right center to Nab Olson trying to get a triple. Just fantastic plays from him. Michael Chavis was my honorable mention. Just the energy he provided with 2 doubles last night. Playing good defense at first. Again, just great to see him being very versatile and proving he can play effectively at multiple positions, first, second, third, short, left field. It's really valuable to the Sox. And I know the front office loves seeing this. And then Bogart's honorable mention because he went off in Game 3 with a lot of hits and some good defensive plays, but he had a lot of bad base running blunders in Game 2, and he was kind of really too non-existent and too quiet in the first couple of games, so that's why he gets an honorable mention from me. And then for pitching, I also picked Garrett Richards. Again, just another great start from him. 6 innings, no runs. Just it goes to show that if you make one little change, it can pay off in crazy dividends, and that's exactly what's happening with Richards. How do you think or who'd you pick for the Athletics players in the series?
For the players of the series for the A's, I had Matt Olson and Ramon Laureano for the 2 picks. I wasn't super familiar with Oakland's roster prior to this series. I'm not going to lie. I had to do a little bit of research on them. Some of the players on that team. Some of the guys, as we mentioned earlier, are pretty seasoned vets, so we're familiar with them. But, yeah, I'd say I'd give it to those 2 guys, and then a shout-out, obviously, to Mitch Moreland. Shout-out, I believe. And then, why do I forget? Who did the A's have as their pitcher in the first game? I forget his last name.
Bassett?
Yeah, Bassett, my bad. I'd pick Bassett as the pitcher because he, as you said, really did an excellent job against the Sox, and he really got to an offense that's been pretty dominant. So, yeah, credit to him where it's due. And I think that was a really good all-around pitching game. So, yeah, he really added to that too.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I had Olson as my number 1 player because it seemed like he was everywhere in all 3 games, getting RBIs, hitting homers, scoring runs, playing good defense at first. So he had a great series. Mitch Moreland, in the DH spot, returning to Fenway for the first time since being traded. Got some great hits. Can't ask for much more from him. Still doing well, as he's going into his deeper 30s, as you talked about earlier in the podcast. And then Elvis Andrus, who it seems like it's been around forever. I had as an honorable mention. Got a lot of, I think he had like a multiple hit game, and he might have had hits in all 3 games of the series. Obviously, he had the big play to convince Erod that he was stealing home and make him balk. So that was a big run in the second game. And then for pitching, I had Bassett, who put together a great start, as you talked about. Let me check his stat line again quickly. Here it is. Yeah, he went 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, 2 earned runs, and 10 strikeouts. So I gave him the number 1 pitching nod. But then I gave an honorable mention to Caprillion, who is making his first career major league start, because he went 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, and 6 strikeouts. So that's a great first major league start. And got to tip your cap off to him. I mean, his parents were in the crowd, so got to feel happy for him there. And those were my players. So we'll just talk about this series against the Angels quickly. Obviously, it's gone underway already. I don't want to talk about, it's really a back and forth game right now. It's kind of a nail biter, so I don't really want to spoil what's happening in the game right now. But how do you think the series is going to go? Pivetta is on the mound tonight. He's already been taken out of the game because it's in the 7th, but it's Perez versus Dylan Bundy tomorrow. Dylan Bundy has a 5.03 ERA, and he's 0-4. And then it's Nathan Eovaldi versus Quintana on the Sunday game, as Quintana is 0-3 with a 9.00 ERA. So, yeah, we're going up against 2 pitchers on the Angels who are struggling, and we're throwing out Perez and Eovaldi for the last 2 games. So how do you think this series is going to go?
Believe it or not, I don't know how today is going to go. I don't really want to say the results. Somebody just had a nice something that, we've... Something. Yeah, not to reveal that, but this game is really close. Like you said, nail biter. Not going to get into it. So it's almost done, too. So we can't really... at this point, we can almost recap it, but no, we will at the end. But I think today could go either way, obviously. We don't actually know because it's underway. This is the first time where there's really been a game that's this deep in underway. We've had other series where there's been games, but there was like the first inning or so when we were done. This game could go either way without revealing it. I think, believe it or not, I think they could potentially win Perez Day. It really depends on how Perez pitches. And then that third game against Quintana with the 9.0 ERA, that should be an easy win. But
Nasty Nate's looking to rebound too. We got him on the mound.
Yeah, definitely. I think this could be a good game for Eovaldi to rebound as well. So I don't really want to say a sweep. I'm going to say 2 of 3 because I think today could go either way, and we'll have to see how the next 2 go. But they're definitely going to win at least 1 game because that last matchup, I don't see how someone with that high of an ERA this far into the season, you just can't take advantage of that. This offense, at least.
Yeah, I'm gonna, just for the sake of variety. I mean, I hope I don't curse us here because I hope I don't like pull a Charles Barkley or whatever. But I'm just gonna say the Red Sox sweep. We're not gonna talk about what's going on right now, but I think, as you said, we're going up against Dylan Bundy, who has a 5.03 ERA, no wins. Jose Quintana 0-3 with a 9.00 ERA. With our offense, there's no excuses to, at least as you said, take 2 of 3. But we have a chance to win this game tonight, so. I'm just going to say we're going to sweep just so we have different answers, but I really hope I don't screw us here. Hopefully the Red Sox are able to do well this series and kind of rebound after a somewhat disappointing 3-game set against the Athletics. But that's going to do it for this recap, unless you have any other talking points you want to bring up.
No, I think that's it.
So that'll do it. Thanks everyone again for tuning in. Make sure to hit that like button, that subscribe button. You will have more Red Sox podcasts coming in the future. Things are going to be a little flux for the next couple of weeks because Ricky and me are both undergoing surgical procedures. So we're still trying to figure out if both of us will be able to be on the show at the same time, but we might be filtering in some guests, like a talk show or something.
Yeah, like Ellen, minus the cancel culture.
I'll plead the fifth on no, yeah. But we'll have some special guests on here. Ricky, I think, knows who I'm thinking about in mind, but we won't say their name. It'd be amazing if they're able to come on the podcast, but this person, But
that's all you when I'm gone. That is all you. I'll host one myself, but I'm not doing it with.
we got to keep it a surprise for the viewers. We can't bury the lead. We learned our lesson too much. So, point is, we might have a special.
I gotta say, we did a really good job, especially with this game so far underway right now, not ruining anything. Like this was a good one.
Right. So we might have some special guests appear on the podcast in the next couple of weeks, but stay tuned for more Red Sox recaps. Celtics recaps for as long as they're playing will be coming soon. Bruins recaps will probably be starting tomorrow since the playoffs are starting against the Caps. And Patriots recaps potentially in the fall. Reality TV recaps coming in the summer. And I feel like I'm missing something. Oh, yeah, personal interviews also coming at some point soon. So a lot more content coming out, especially now that we're all out of school, just pretty much right about now. But that is going to do it. Like that button. Absorb that button. Absorb the subscribe button. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you like about us, what you didn't like about us in the comments. Like, it's a big smile out of Ricky every time. And yeah, we will be talking to you guys again in a few days once the series against the Angels wraps up. So once again, everyone, have a good one. Take care. Go Red Sox. We will talk to you soon. Have a good night.